welcome to the third video in this series, Identifying a Supervisor. My name is Emily Lacroix. I'm an assistant professor in the psychology department at UNB in Fredericton, and I'm also our honors program coordinator. This video series about applying to grad school in psychology is relevant for our UNB undergraduates as well as anyone considering psychology grad school in Canada. Finding a supervisor is one of the most important choices that you'll make when it comes to applying to graduate school. Supervision of your research is a really key part of your development. Your supervisor can be your greatest mentor and supporter, your biggest advocate, and the person who helps you create career connections that will help you establish yourself when you graduate. They can be a lifelong mentor and collaborator, ideally. In the worst case situation, though, in rare cases, a supervisor can be your biggest roadblock, source of anxiety, and conflict. So this is a really important decision, and it has implications because you are going to be working with this person for 3 to 7 years usually, depending on your program. You want to consider, of course, the research area, whether they specialize in the topic that you want to study. But that's not the most important thing. I would actually argue that the fit and quality of mentorship is more important than the specific topic. How much support and individualized attention would you like? If you're joining a really big lab with many graduate students and huge programs of grant-funded research, that can be great for the opportunities, but you might not get as much individualized attention as you would like. In my graduate program, my supervisor had a rule of only taking a graduate student every other year, and this basically meant that at any given time point, the lab would never have more than 3 or 4 grad students, and we would all get high-quality mentorship. We would all get timely feedback on our work. We would get individual contact and meetings with our supervisor when we needed it. Some labs have more of a hierarchical structure or collaborative structure where you won't see your supervisor that much. You'll be mentored by postdocs or more senior students in the lab, and that can be great too. Just consider what you might want to get out of it. How responsive a supervisor is before you're admitted isn't necessarily a good indicator of how they will respond to you and how much time they'll give you when you are actually admitted and you're a graduate student of theirs. Sometimes supervisors limit the contact before the applications because they just get so much interest in people contacting them that if they would respond to every email, they would be neglecting their current grad students. Other times, people might be really courting graduate students and super responsive and nurturing before that person joins their lab, and then, fall off the radar when you're actually there. The best way to get a sense of someone's supervision and the resources that they give to their grad students is to talk to the grad students. That's often a possibility later in the application process. Considering interpersonal fit as well. This is hard to kind of describe or capture, and that's because it differs for everyone. A good fit for me with a supervisor might not be a good fit for someone else with that same person. Do you jive with them? Do you like spending time with them? Working with them? How do you feel when you meet with them? Does this person bring out the best in you? So that's kind of that interpersonal fit variable, and it's hard to get a sense of that before you actually apply or meet with the person. You can sometimes learn about a supervisor through their lab website. When I was applying, a few websites I would go to, and they really turned me off in different ways. Either they were really super outdated. That's not always an indicator of the quality of the research, right? Some people just don't update their websites because they don't have the time, and they're doing amazing work and giving amazing supervision. But sometimes an outdated website or one that's written in a style that conveys a certain attitude or personality can be a big turnoff. So basically pay attention to their websites. Email communication, how they respond to you, social media presence. Sometimes supervisors will have a Twitter or a lab social media, and you can get information there about current projects, other students, and their attitudes or what excites them about research. And of course, grad students are the best source of information. Sometimes after you're admitted or during the interview process, you'll be connected with current graduate students. Always take them up on that and meet with them, because they're going to be able to give you the true, unbiased info about what that supervisor is like. Excuse me. If the grad students are hesitant or not really glowing in how they're talking about the supervisor, that would be a bit of a red or yellow flag. Not every supervisor wants to be contacted. People have preferences around this, and they differ by faculty and by program. So lots of different preferences here. In some programs, you're like expected to have identified a supervisor before applying and have had contact with the person. That's the case at Dalhousie in their Masters of Psychiatry research program, for example. And also in some clinical programs, that's the case. In other programs, it really doesn't make a difference, and faculty don't respond or meet with students before applications are submitted. Myself, and I am early in taking part in the admissions process. I'll be taking, hopefully, my first graduate student in the next year. My process has been that I'll respond to emails really briefly. I have a template, and it's pretty much quite similar to everyone. I tell them about my current projects, and I say that I'm going to happily consider their application after it's been reviewed by the selection committee, because especially in clinical programs, you get contacted a lot, sometimes every day, an email from another student. So I often just send this kind of template email and tweak it a little bit. So and I usually don't meet with students in the next year or so. My process is going to be not to meet with anyone across the board, just because it can really bias the process. You get attached to a certain candidate before actually objectively considering everyone alongside each other. It can be problematic. Before you contact a supervisor, it's really important to have read the program webpage, their faculty webpage, the lab website, maybe even a few of their recent publications before contacting them, because those sources of information might answer the questions that you have. Follow any guidance that you find. If they say that they don't want people to contact them and that they'll just review applications after they're submitted, then respect that. If it's not specified whether they're taking a student in the next year, it's appropriate to email to ask them briefly. If it is specified, emailing them probably won't hurt, might not even have any impact on the admissions process. In some institutions, though, it might actually be kind of a requirement, so when in doubt, I would say send them a really brief email. When to contact any time before the deadline is acceptable. The sooner the better. July to November is a good window if applications are due in December. The do's of contacting supervisors: always use a university-affiliated or professional email account. Even if it's your first and last name at Gmail or something, that's more professional than yogirl69@hotmail.com. That was my email address when I was 12. Address the email to Dr. Last Name, not hey dude. Be brief. Include your CV and your transcripts. That way you're kind of giving them the information that they need. And just ask whether they plan to accept a student. Summarize your background, really briefly. Tell them why you're excited to apply and work with them. And obviously know about the program and their research before contacting them. Respect the admissions process. So if they say they don't meet with students before the applications are submitted, don't push for a meeting. When you're contacting supervisors, I would say my key piece of advice is do not ask for anything that requires effort on their part. The more effort is needed to respond to your email, the less likely they're going to respond. It's not that they're mean or they don't want to respond. Probably they'll just be like, those are good questions. I don't have the time right now because that would take 15 or 30 minutes to respond to. They procrastinate on it and never respond. It falls to the wayside. So questions like, tell me about your current research. What are you looking for in a graduate student? What are your thoughts about this theoretical debate? Usually require more effort to answer, so save that. Especially if the information is readily available online, like how do I apply? That would be a question if you're really having trouble navigating the process. The person to ask is not the supervisor, it's the graduate program administrator or the director of graduate studies at that institution. You can usually find out who that is on the people page for the department. Asking theoretical questions, it can be tempting because you want to convey to them that you're excited and curious and know something about their research. So I have done some research on food addiction, for example. This is a complex question and it's kind of answered in some of my papers on the topic, so I would be kind of peeved to answer this. Asking about information that they have to do any work to give you probably reduces the chances that you're going to get a response. Don't cast too wide a net. What I mean by this is don't just have a template email that's not specific to the person and the department and the program and send it to everyone in Canada. Only contact people who you would be really interested in working with. Oops. And only contact a few people per institution. In my department, we all kind of work in the same office space, hallway, so there was one occasion I'm thinking of where a student contacted, I think, every faculty member in our department who's listed on our people page. We all got the same kind of email, and we talked to each other. That person didn't maximize their chances by contacting everyone. They actually reduced their chances because probably everyone could tell it was pretty transparent that they contacted everyone, and we talked to each other. Casting too wide a net as well. I've been contacted by people who express interest in an area of research that is clearly not mine. I usually don't respond to those. Describing a highly specific project that you want to explore. This can also be tempting because I understand you might want to show interest or show excitement, show some knowledge about the research area. This usually does not work in your favor. You won't actually identify a project usually until you get there in the first couple years. Describing a highly specific project, you're more likely to shoot yourself in the foot by proposing something that either isn't what that supervisor wants to work on in the next few years with a grad student, or because you're new-ish to the research area, betrays some kind of misunderstanding about it. The more specific you are, right, the less likely it is to actually align with what that person wants to do in the coming years for their program of research. So avoid describing a project that you want to do with them. State your interest in the research area, and ideally you will have demonstrated that already by working in similar areas or related topics. Here's an example of an email that I would look favorably upon. Even though I don't really require emails and I don't take it into consideration too much before the applications are actually submitted, this is a good example of an email that I would like to receive. Hi, Dr. Lacroix. Not, hey lady. My name is blank. And a short summary about who you are. I'm a fourth year undergrad student, or I've been working in this lab since I graduated. I plan to apply for this next cycle, reaching out to ask whether you're accepting a grad student next year. Summarize how you've demonstrated your interest in their research by working in a similar lab, for example, with Dr. Sourdough, kind of going with a bread theme here. My undergrad research has focused on this. I'd be thrilled to continue working in this area under your supervision. If you will be considering PhD students for the upcoming cycle, I'd greatly appreciate the opportunity to be considered as an applicant. Great. Keeping it brief, to the point. Attaching your CV and transcripts, sure, I'm probably not going to look at them because that's not my practice, but some people do. Thank you for your time and consideration. Bobby Baguette. So, giving them the information they need, keeping it very brief. If you don't hear back from them in a couple weeks, you can send a friendly follow-up reminder. Just an email that says, hello, just checking in. I'm assuming you didn't see this, or maybe it fell to the bottom of your index. Still interested in graduate supervision with you, yada yada. If you don't hear back ever from them, but the website says that they're taking students in the next cycle, it's still very safe to apply. I suggest applying anyways. Some people might just ignore all emails and only start corresponding with people after the admissions committee has screened all the applications. If they actually do meet with you and they're interested, or they chat, thank them and affirm your interest after. Don't get too preoccupied with this whole process of contacting supervisors. It really depends on the program and the process that the supervisor has. Generally, it won't hurt, but if you don't hear back, it's not really make or break in a lot of cases. And thanks so much for watching. Oh, before I finish, I had one other thing to address, which is that I've seen advice actually on Twitter suggesting that a way to guarantee a response from a faculty supervisor is to ask them to share a PDF version of the paper, or say that you can't find it and that you want them to share a paper with you, and then they'll feel compelled to respond, and then you say, by the way, are you taking students? Really bad practice, because it's not transparent. You're asking for them to do work, you're wasting their time, even though you could probably find the paper elsewhere. To me, what that says is that you have trouble locating research resources, finding papers, and asking a librarian for help. So it tells me that you don't know how to locate my research because it is available online. Because I support open access, most things are available online, right? So asking for papers, getting people to do work, it's asking for work, it's wasting their time, and probably tells them that you can't locate papers well, which is a skill that you're going to need for grad school. So that's a no-no. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll have another video soon about funding applications. Thank you.